My fiancé said, "If you loved me, you'd pay for my parents' mortgage." I just nodded. Then I canceled the wedding. 48 hours later, her entire family showed up at my office. I, 32M, thought I had everything figured out. 6 months away from the wedding, a promotion at work, a woman I believed I'd spend my life with. Then she asked me to pay off her parents' mortgage, and everything I thought I knew came crashing down. The conversation happened on a Tuesday evening. We were sitting in my apartment, going over wedding expenses on my laptop, when she brought it up. Her parents were struggling with their mortgage, she said. They'd helped raise her, sacrificed everything for her education, and now they were drowning in debt. She looked at me with those eyes I'd fallen for 3 years ago and told me that if I truly loved her, I'd help them. Not a loan. A payment. The full amount. $230,000. I felt my chest tighten. I'd worked brutal hours for 8 years to build my savings. 80-hour weeks, missed holidays, constant stress. That money represented every sacrifice I'd made to build a secure future for us. I asked her if she was serious, and she didn't hesitate. Her voice was steady, almost rehearsed, as she explained that this was what families did for each other. That once we were married, my money would be our money anyway. So what difference did it make if we helped them now? I sat there, calculator still open on the screen, and just nodded. I told her I'd think about it. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said she knew I'd do the right thing. Then she left for her book club meeting. The moment the door closed, I opened my laptop and started digging. Something about her tone, the practiced way she'd delivered that speech, it didn't sit right. I'd never been the paranoid type, but my gut was screaming at me to look deeper. Her parents' social media was public. Within 20 minutes, I found photos from their vacation to Greece. 2 weeks ago, luxury resort, sunset dinners, yacht tours. Her father had tagged the location, posted reviews of 5-star restaurants. I scrolled back further. A renovation project on their house, completed 4 months ago. New kitchen, hardwood floors, the works. Her mother had documented everything, thanking the contractor publicly for the beautiful work. I felt sick. I pulled up property records. Their mortgage was refinanced 8 months ago. Lower interest rate, manageable payments. They weren't drowning. They were fine. Better than fine. I spent the entire night piecing it together. Text message timestamps she'd shown me, supposedly from her mother asking for help, didn't match the metadata when I asked to see them again the next day. She fumbled, said she must have deleted the originals. But I'd already seen enough. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I needed time to think, to plan. By noon, I'd made my decision. I wasn't going to confront her with accusations. I wasn't going to argue or beg for explanations. I was going to do something else entirely. I contacted the wedding planner and told her to cancel everything. The venue, the catering, the flowers, all of it. She protested, reminded me about non-refundable deposits, but I didn't care. I'd lose $30,000 in deposits alone, but that was cheaper than the alternative. I called the jeweler and returned the custom wedding bands. I notified the hotel about the room blocks. Every single vendor got a cancellation notice by end of business that day. Then I went to see a lawyer. I wanted everything documented, every financial record of our relationship cataloged and separated. We weren't married yet, so legally, everything was still straightforward. But I wanted insurance. The lawyer asked if I was sure, and I told him I'd never been more certain of anything in my life. That evening, she came over with takeout, cheerful and affectionate. She asked if I'd thought about what they'd discussed. I told her I had. I said I'd decided to help her parents. Her face lit up like a child on Christmas morning. She threw her arms around me, told me I was amazing, that she'd always known I was the one. She pulled out her phone, said she'd call her parents right away to share the good news. I stopped her. I said I wanted to handle it properly, through my financial advisor, to make sure the tax implications were managed correctly. She hesitated for just a moment, then agreed. She trusted me, she said. She knew I'd take care of everything. For the next 48 hours, I acted completely normal. I texted her good morning and good night. I asked about her day. I sent her a funny meme. I was the same man she thought she'd manipulated into financial servitude. But behind the scenes, I was systematically dismantling our future together. Friday morning arrived. I went to work early. At 9 o'clock sharp, I sent her a single text message. It was simple, just 3 sentences. The wedding was canceled. I knew about the lies regarding her parents' financial situation. I wished her well, but we were done. I blocked her number immediately. Then I blocked her on every social media platform, every messaging app, everything. I didn't want to hear the excuses, the tears, the promises to change. I'd made my decision, and I was sticking to it. My phone, however, started ringing off the hook from unknown numbers within minutes. I didn't answer. They left voicemails, dozens of them. Her voice, panicked and confused. Her mother, angry and demanding explanations. Her father, trying to sound reasonable while clearly furious. I deleted them all without listening past the first few seconds. At 11 o'clock, my assistant knocked on my office door. She looked uncomfortable. There were people here to see me, she said. They didn't have an appointment. They were causing a scene in the lobby. I asked who they were, and she told me it was my fiancée and her entire family. I felt a cold calm settle over me. I'd anticipated something like this, though I'd expected it to take longer than 48 hours. I told my assistant to call building security and have them escorted out. The visitors were not welcome, and if they refused to leave, the police should be contacted. She nodded and left. Through my office window, I could see down into the lobby. 5 floors below, I watched as security approached them. My ex-fiancée was crying, gesturing wildly. Her mother was shouting, pointing up toward the building. Her father stood with his arms crossed, looking like he wanted to punch someone. 2 people I didn't recognize, probably siblings or extended family, hovered nearby looking uncomfortable. Security was professional but firm. The scene lasted about 10 minutes before they finally left, my ex-fiancée looking back at the building repeatedly as they walked away. My assistant came back to confirm they were gone and asked if I was all right. I thanked her and told her I was fine. I wasn't, not really, but I would be. The voicemails continued throughout the day. By 5 o'clock, I had 63 missed calls. I blocked every single number. That evening, I finally listened to one voicemail, just to understand what I was dealing with. It was her father. His tone had shifted from angry to threatening. He said I'd embarrassed his family, that I owed them an explanation, that I couldn't just walk away from a commitment like this. He said they'd make sure everyone knew what kind of man I really was, that my reputation would be destroyed. I forwarded the voicemail to my lawyer. The weekend was quiet. Too quiet. I half expected them to show up at my apartment, but they didn't. Maybe building security had been clear enough about trespassing. I spent Saturday cleaning out everything that belonged to her from my place. Clothes, toiletries, books, photos. I packed it all into boxes and arranged for a courier service to deliver it to her apartment. I included no note, no explanation, just her belongings. Sunday night, I got an email. It was from her, a long, rambling message about how I'd misunderstood everything. Her parents really were struggling, she insisted. The vacation had been a gift from her aunt. The renovation had been financed through a special program. The mortgage refinance had actually increased their debt, not decreased it. Every explanation felt like another lie stacked on top of the first ones. But then the email shifted. She admitted she'd been scared. Scared that I wouldn't help if she asked directly. Scared that I'd think her family was irresponsible. Scared that I'd judge them. So she'd exaggerated some details, she said, to make me understand how serious the situation was. She begged me to reconsider. She said she loved me. She said we could work through this. I read it twice, looking for any genuine remorse, any real accountability. I found none. Every sentence was an excuse, a justification, a deflection. I didn't respond. I simply moved the email to a folder my lawyer had requested I create for documentation purposes. Update 1. Monday morning started with a surprise. My boss called me into his office before I'd even finished my coffee. He looked uncomfortable, asked me if everything was all right. Apparently, someone had called the company over the weekend, claiming I was involved in fraud, that I'd stolen money from my fiancé's family. The accusations were vague but alarming enough that HR wanted to have a conversation. I felt rage building in my chest, but kept my voice level. I explained the situation briefly, told my boss about the canceled wedding and the harassment that had followed. I offered to have my lawyer contact HR directly to provide documentation that proved the accusations were baseless. My boss nodded, said he believed me, but protocol required the HR meeting anyway. The meeting happened that afternoon. I brought printed bank statements, text message logs, emails, everything that demonstrated I'd never taken a penny from anyone. I showed them the timeline of events, the property records I'd found, the evidence of her parents' actual financial situation. HR was thorough but fair. By the end of the hour-long meeting, They'd cleared me completely and documented the harassment attempt. But I wasn't satisfied with just being cleared. I asked HR if the company had caller ID records from the weekend calls. They did. I requested copies from my lawyer. If her family wanted to play dirty, I'd make sure there were consequences. That evening, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was her brother, someone I'd met exactly twice in 3 years. He said he wanted to talk, that he thought the whole situation had gotten out of hand. He suggested meeting for coffee, just the two of us, to clear the air. I didn't respond. 20 minutes later, another text. He said his sister was devastated. That maybe both sides had made mistakes, but wasn't our relationship worth fighting for? He said their parents were just trying to protect their daughter, that I should understand that as someone who would have been part of the family. I blocked his number. Tuesday brought a new development. My lawyer called with news. He'd drafted a cease and desist letter addressing the harassment, the false accusations to my employer, and the threatening voicemails. He was ready to send it to her and her parents, but he wanted my approval first. The letter was strongly worded, he warned. It would make clear that any further contact would result in legal action, including possible defamation suits and restraining orders. I told him to send it immediately. The letter was delivered Wednesday morning via courier, requiring signatures. By noon, my phone had blown up again, but this time from a different source. Her aunt, the one who had supposedly paid for that Greek vacation, called my office directly. She somehow got through to my assistant by claiming it was a family emergency. I took the call, mostly out of curiosity. Her aunt's voice was cold and measured. She told me I was being cruel, that her niece had made a mistake but didn't deserve to have her life destroyed over it, that calling off a wedding so close to the date was traumatic enough without adding legal threats. She suggested I was the real manipulator, that I'd clearly never loved her niece if I could walk away so easily. I listened without interrupting. When she finished, I asked her a simple question. Had she really paid for the vacation to Greece? Or was that another lie I could easily disprove with a few phone calls? The silence on the other end lasted several seconds. Then she hung up. Thursday morning, I received a certified letter at my office. It was from a law firm representing my ex-fiancée. The letter accused me of breach of promise to marry and demanded compensation for emotional distress and financial losses related to the canceled wedding. They were suing me for $75,000. I actually laughed. I called my lawyer immediately and read him the letter. He laughed too. He explained that breach of promise suits were nearly impossible to win in our state, that the claims were absurd, and that this was likely just an intimidation tactic. He'd file a response, he said, and likely countersue for the harassment and false accusations. But something in me had shifted. I was done being reactive. I wanted to end this permanently, and I wanted them to understand exactly who they'd tried to manipulate. I spent Thursday evening compiling everything. Every text message where she'd asked for money over the years, always with some excuse that turned out to be exaggerated or false. Every time she'd pressured me to pay for things for her family, framing it as tests of my commitment. Every conversation where she'd questioned my love based on my willingness to spend money. I'd been blind to the pattern before, but now it was crystal clear. I documented her parents' actual financial situation in detail. Property values, mortgage records, income estimates based on public records, social media evidence of their lifestyle. I created a timeline showing how the story about the mortgage had evolved, how the numbers had changed each time she'd told it. Then I did something I probably shouldn't have. I created a private blog post, password protected, laying out the entire story. No names, just facts and evidence. I titled it, Financial Coercion and Why I Canceled My Wedding. I sent the link and password to exactly 3 people, her aunt, her brother, and one of her best friends who'd reached out expressing concern. My message was simple. I wrote that I understood they cared about her and wanted to support her, but they deserved to know the full truth before choosing sides. I said I had no interest in publicly destroying anyone's reputation, but I wouldn't tolerate being portrayed as the villain either. I told them that after reading this, if they still felt I was in the wrong, I'd respect that and leave them alone. But if they had questions, my lawyer's contact information was available. Friday morning, I got a call from her best friend. She was crying. She said she'd had no idea, that my ex had told everyone a completely different story. According to the version her friends had heard, I'd promised to help with the mortgage. Her parents had already made financial decisions based on that promise, and then I'd backed out at the last minute and canceled the wedding out of spite. The friend said she felt sick, that she'd been defending my ex all week, and now she didn't know what to believe. I didn't gloat. I told her I appreciated her calling, that I understood this was difficult, and that I hoped she'd make whatever choice felt right to her. She asked if there was any chance I'd reconsider, if maybe with counseling things could be fixed. I told her no. Some betrayals couldn't be undone, and trust, once destroyed this completely, was impossible to rebuild. The brother called next. He was angry, but the anger was directed at his sister now, not at me. He said he'd confronted her about the evidence I'd shared, and she'd eventually admitted that she'd exaggerated some details to make sure I understood the seriousness of the situation. He apologized for the harassment, said he'd talked to his parents, and asked if I'd be willing to drop the legal threats if everyone backed off. I told him I'd consider it once the harassment actually stopped and the lawsuit was withdrawn. Until then, my lawyer would handle all communication. Update 2. The following Monday, exactly 1 week after I'd sent the cancellation text, the lawsuit was quietly withdrawn. No explanation, no apology, just a filing from their lawyer dropping all claims. My lawyer sent a final letter reiterating that any further contact would be considered harassment and would be met with legal action. And then, finally, silence. The weeks that followed were strange. I threw myself into work, took on extra projects, stayed late at the office. My friends had all heard some version of what happened, though I kept the details private. Most were supportive. A few admitted they'd never liked her, had always thought she was too focused on money, but hadn't wanted to say anything while we were happy. I went to therapy. My doctor suggested it, said that even though I felt like I'd handled everything logically and correctly, there was still emotional processing that needed to happen. She was right. I was angry, angrier than I wanted to admit. Not just at my ex, but at myself for not seeing the signs earlier. For ignoring the small red flags that, in hindsight, had been there all along. 2 months after the canceled wedding, I ran into her aunt at a coffee shop. We made eye contact, and I saw her hesitate. Then she walked over. She said she wanted to apologize, that she'd been wrong to judge me without knowing the full story. She said her niece had moved back home temporarily, was in therapy herself, and had apparently admitted to her family that she'd had a shopping problem she'd been hiding for years. The mortgage request had been an attempt to get money to cover debts her parents didn't even know about. I thanked her for telling me, but said I didn't need to know more. That chapter of my life was closed. 3 months later, I got a handwritten letter forwarded through my lawyer. It was from her. She said she was sorry, that therapy had helped her understand how manipulative and wrong her behavior had been. She said she didn't expect forgiveness, but she wanted me to know that I'd actually done her a favor by walking away. It forced her to confront problems she'd been running from for years. She said she hoped I'd find happiness, and that she was genuinely sorry for the pain she'd caused. I read the letter once, put it in the folder with all the other documentation, and never responded. 6 months after the canceled wedding, I accepted a promotion that required relocating to a different city. I took it without hesitation. Fresh start, new environment, distance from everything that had happened. I sold my apartment, the one where we'd planned our fake future together, and moved into a smaller place near my new office. Life got better slowly. I started dating again, casually at first. I was cautious, maybe too cautious, but I'd learned my lesson about ignoring red flags. I built new friendships. I focused on hobbies I'd neglected during the relationship. I traveled alone, something I'd never done before, and discovered I actually enjoyed my own company. A year later, I was sitting in my new apartment when I got a notification on social media. She'd gotten engaged again. Different guy, someone she'd apparently known from college. I looked at the photo once, felt nothing, and kept scrolling. That person, that life, felt like it belonged to someone else entirely. Looking back now, I know I made the right choice. Not just in canceling the wedding, but in how I handled everything that came after. I could have been vindictive. I could have posted everything publicly, destroyed her reputation, made her life hell. But I didn't, because that's not who I wanted to be. I just wanted out, and I got exactly that. The price was $30,000 in lost deposits, some uncomfortable meetings at work, and a few months of harassment. But what I gained was worth infinitely more. I gained clarity about what I actually wanted in a partner. I gained confidence in my ability to trust my instincts. I gained the knowledge that I could walk away from something, even something I'd invested years in, when it became clear it was wrong. The woman I'm seeing now, we've been together for 4 months. She's different in every way that matters. When we talk about money, it's practical and honest. When she needs something, she asks directly, and we figure it out together. When I told her the story about my canceled wedding, she didn't make excuses for my ex. She just said she was glad I'd had the strength to walk away. I realized something important through all of this. Love isn't about grand gestures or proving your commitment through money. It's not about sacrificing your stability to rescue someone else from problems they may or may not actually have. Real love is built on honesty, on respect, on partnership. It's two people facing life together, not one person trying to extract resources from the other. That Tuesday evening, when she asked me to pay off her parents' mortgage, she thought she was testing my love. What she actually did was show me exactly who she was. And I'm grateful, in a way, that she revealed herself before we got married, before there were kids or shared property or a decade of my life invested in someone who saw me as a bank account rather than a partner. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just walking away and building a better life. It's refusing to engage with the drama, refusing to let their chaos become your chaos. It's knowing your worth and refusing to accept anything less than genuine partnership. I nodded when she asked me to pay off that mortgage. But that nod wasn't agreement. It was acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that I finally saw clearly what I'd been trying not to see for months, maybe years. And 48 hours later, when her entire family showed up at my office, they weren't trying to save a relationship. They were trying to salvage a con that had been exposed. I'm 33 now. Single apartment in a city I love, career that challenges me, friends who actually know me. And I've never been happier. That's the real ending to this story. Not drama, not revenge, just peace. Just knowing I made the right choice and never looked back. If you'd like to see more stories like this, a gentle tap on the subscribe and hype button would mean the world to us. Please subscribe and press the hype button. Thanks in advance.